is a team that we're going to kind of have to talk about because, we all know it's a big market. The Toronto Maple Leafs.
Woof.
Currently over the cap for like essentially 1.5 million. They're going to have to kill in cap somewhere. This is the team that has all the money in the world, all the cap space in the world, but they always choke. Always choke. And you have 3 players making over 10 mil. That Tavares contract they're going to regret. Even though I think Tavares is still producing well. Is he that guy anymore? No.
Not 11 mil.
No. But you have Austin Matthews, Tavares, you have Marner making over 10 mil. You have William Nylander making almost 7. You have Kerfoot making 3.5. And the crazy thing, you have Riley Morgan making 7.5 million. Is he really a number 1 defenseman? Maybe. I think he's more of a 2. Rask rating is a 1. I think Jake Muzzin's 5.5. If he's making that. Like TJ Brody played well. Justin Hall making 2 million. Okay. Lindgren 1.4. Maybe he can make that next step. I think Giordano played very well for them, and he took a team-friendly deal to sign up on them. But their goaltending tandem is still, it's absolute dog shit. Matt Murray and Samsonov. Like I would say this. I would be fine of having one of these goalies in a tandem in the backup role, right? Yep. One of them. Yep. Because then like you're rolling the dice. But having 2 guys where you're rolling the dice and like, hope for the best. Little interesting. And I think with the way how Toronto constructs their roster is absolutely dumb. I mean, Austin Matthews is a world-class player. Mitch Marner, I would say, is a world-class player. I think John Tavares is a very good player still. You can't have 3 $10 million guys. You just can't. And, like, this would be a very hard contract to move. But if they were somehow able to move Tavares so they could spend money elsewhere, I think this team would be far better off. I think they got so obsessed with the offensive talent, they forgot that there's other parts of the team that need to be filled. I mean, you have Riley Morgan, is a solid guy. Muzzin's solid. Brody's solid. But, Hall, he makes mistakes his own end. Liljegren, he's okay. Giordano, he's good, but he's getting older. He's getting gray in the beard. And then you got Sandin, who's like, okay. Like, I think you could add a couple nice players instead of having to do retreads. Like, Alexander Kerfoot's done pretty well for them. But, like, for example, the Wayne Simmons signing, like the Joey Anderson signing, like Goddard, like there's guys here that they just sign as, like, scraps from other teams because they have no other cap space. Nothing to play with. And I think the Toronto Maple Leafs is a team that's, like, a perfect example that just because you have the money to spend it doesn't mean you should. Like,
100%. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, you look at their defensive core. I mean, let's face it. They from the teams we've looked at, they're one of the older defensive cores.
Yep.
That's definitely something you don't want, right? Because it'd be nice if it was, spread out with like some experience, some youth, and stuff like that. But when you have 3 out of 7 defensemen that are in their 20s, 2 of them in their early 20s, one of them is 28, and then everybody else is like 30 and up, and they're not bona fide, like, really good. They're not considered in their prime technically. Like, yeah, you're messing up here. Those are guys that you're signing, or you have signed for some time now. That I think at this point you look to move them.
Yeah.
You build them up a little bit during the season because, let's face it, Toronto is a good team, right?
They're a good regular season team.
Right. Well, that's what I'm getting at, right? During the season, they're going to be a good team. You're going to be able to move a lot of these guys. You look like a Clifford. Clifford, he's a forward, 31, right? He's got a Stanley Cup under his belt. I think he may have 2 with LA, right? You look at him, bottom line, $762,000. That's all you have. you trade him off, right? You may get a younger piece. Defenseman wise, you take some of the older guys like a Brody or something, put them somewhere where they're going to be in use at this point. You don't have the team that can pass that threshold, and you've proven it for 2 seasons in a row, where you've been expected to win your series, and you were ahead by a good amount.
Joking, sorry.
And you're lucky someone did the Heimlich maneuver. Don't sue me, Heimlich. I'm not paying that fee, whatever. But yeah, someone did an abdominal thrust, right? Because you can't say Heimlich anymore. Just to let you know, that's like a whole thing.
What?
Right? Yeah, you can't say Heimlich because the family sued.
What?
The Heimlich family sued. They sued so that way, if anyone ever taught CPR with the name Heimlich as a Heimlich maneuver, which is the abdominal thrust, right? They want money for that. So that's why, if you look at all CPR training and everything now, they call it the abdominal thrust. It's because they're not going to pay the Heimlich family money just to have the Heimlich name on their paperwork.
Wait. Listen, I know this is a hockey podcast. I gotta say this because I that is wild to me. I didn't even notice that. So I thought it was just not like woke enough to say Heimlich anymore. So I thought it was something offensive, and that's why in all these trainings they never said it anymore.
No,
that is hysterical. You would like, I don't know, to me, like, that's a life-saving thing to do. Why wouldn't you want your name associated with that so you go down the history books? But that's a whole that's whatever.
And just so you know, Mr. Heimlich himself only did the Heimlich maneuver for the first time, I think, while he's in a nursing home. Just so you know.
That's crazy.
But let's go ahead. Yeah.
Let's get back into hockey instead of medical news.
So like I said, good team season-wise, regular season-wise, but I say take that, start off strong, make a couple of trades where you can carry some of the maybe some young blood, because again, on the defensive end you're getting old, right? Maybe get
really
some defensemen that are like 24, 25, that are decent and you can build on. As far as like the forwards, hey, you may have to trade off 2 pieces. Maybe get rid of one of those big names. I'm sorry, I would get rid of John Tavares. Obviously, Absolutely. He's an old piece. You're gonna have to retain some of that cap hit. Nobody's going to take him at 11 mil. He's maybe a 6-7 mil player at this moment because he's still producing at a pretty high level compared to some of the other centers in the league. So if they do trade him off, I expect them to retain like 3 to 4 mil. But get rid of him and, get somebody else in the mix.
I mean, let's kind of break it down, right, with John Tavares, because we're talking about him, and I think at times he's only 31 years old. That's still relatively young in the NHL. I mean, like, you're a vet at this point, but if you take care of your body, you could go until you're 37, 38, right? Like that's not crazy. And if you're really efficient, you can stay until your 40s, just like Jaromir Jagr. But for a guy that got much maligned by the Toronto Maple Leaf fan base, he was the only one, in my opinion, that really showed up in the playoffs. I mean, I'm not saying he lit up the whole world, but 3 goals, 3 assists in 7 games, 6 points isn't a bad production, especially in playoffs where it gets harder to score. This past season, he had 79 games played, 27 goals, 49 assists for 79 points with a -8. Now, the -8, the plus-minus for Tavares is career-wise, unfortunately, bad because he's been on some bad Islanders teams. But being on this Toronto team, that is a little bit troublesome. But, quite frankly, I mean, this man has always produced. He has always produced around a point per game clip. Really hasn't fallen off. In Toronto, he stayed about that. His first year in Toronto, 82 games played, 47 goals, 41 assists, 88 points. Second year in Toronto, 63 games played, 26 goals, 34 assists, 60 points. COVID-shortened season, 56 games played, 19 goals, 31 assists, 50 points. And then last season, 79 games played, 27 goals, 49 points for plus 76. For 76 points. I think Tavares still has value.
Yeah,
I do. I think Tavares. I think if Tavares was around 7 million, far easier to digest because he's still producing at around a point per game pace.
Yep.
Where I some of the hilarity to me with this team is a lot of fans just blame John Tavares. They think he's terrible. They think he's this. Where, I'm looking at other players to step up in the playoffs. I'm looking for other players to take notes and like really kind of leave an impact, like a lasting impact, and they're not showing up now. For a guy that I would say kind of stepped up this past season in the postseason for first time ever, Mitch Marner. He had 2 goals for 6 assists for 8 points in 7 games played. Like, that's a good season. He had 97 points this past season. Like, Mitch Marner, to be fair to him, unless you disagree, I think he's kind of lived up somewhat to that contract.
I do.
He's always been over a point per game since his 3rd season. And he's just a very, very solid player. But when do you say enough is enough? Like, that's the big question here. Even when these star players like Matthews, right? Let's look at Matthews real quick. Matthews produced. Apologize, it kind of just glitched. Matthews produced even with 9 points in that first round. It's 4 goals, 5 assists, and 7 games played for 9 points. And he had 106 points this past season. I mean, Matthews, you could argue, is going to go down as one of the better USA-born players of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with this team is there's just, outside of those few players and maybe Kerfoot, there's not enough production consistently.
Yep.
And defensively, outside of Morgan and Muzzin and Brody, I mean, Giordano played well, but can I expect a guy that's 38 years old to keep that production up? I'm kind of asking a lot. Like, Giordano on most teams should be a bottom 6 pairing. And I think Giordano could be on a cup-winning team right now if he was like the number 6 defenseman.
Yeah.
And that's not saying he's bad, but it's just saying he's no longer in his prime like he was with the Calgary.
Yep.
I mean, he's 38 years old. He's a little long in the tooth at this point. And, with this goaltending tandem, I don't think Toronto's going to make the playoffs this season. I mean, I think there's talent up front, but if you have guys in net that can't stop a beach ball, it doesn't matter. Because if you're getting into shootouts, it doesn't really matter. Like, maybe they could prove me wrong. Maybe they could be like the Oilers, right? And just score. It doesn't matter who they have in net. Like, Koskinen could let in 10, and the Oilers still win by 11 goals. Maybe that happens. But I think the Edmonton Oilers offensively are far better than the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yep.
And let's be blunt, when the Edmonton Oilers faced a real team, they got their shit pushed in.
Yeah. Yep. They couldn't break the defense. When you have a solid defensive core, it's very difficult to beat a team like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Colorado just stopped them. That's
destroyed them.
It wasn't even close. And you and I had a conversation about this before that series even happened, right? And what did we say? We said Edmonton could only beat Colorado if they show up defensively. Forget about the offense. If they show up defensively, they can win that series, right? Only if they showed up defensively. They couldn't show. They played decently, but when they grinded it out, at the end of the day, they got edged out defensively, and that's why they lost. They couldn't get past the other team's defense, whereas their defense broke.
Absolutely. I think that Colorado was just hands down one of the best teams in the whole NHL, and they wanted to win a cup to prove that. But the way they built that team was fantastic. And you know what? Final thoughts towards Toronto. I think that it's a solid up front roster, but goddamn, God bless you. You need a goaltender. Just are. It's not looking good for you.